All right, this is the last step in finishing these cabinets and leaving them raw before we start getting into priming, painting, and finishing in our next lesson here. So this is it, that's all. So I'm gonna just do a quick video of me doing the whole thing. I'm just gonna sand them all real quick. It should take 5 to 10 minutes to do each one now that we've fixed all the little holes and did all that stuff. So with everything all added together, obviously it takes a little longer than that. But now these things are kind of good to go. So I'm gonna do a once over on 120 really fast, 1 or 2 passes in the same spot, and I'm just gonna go like a vacuum cleaner all the way across everything. With the plywood one, I'm gonna go with the grain. You don't go against the grain, especially with a higher or with a lower grit sandpaper, like 100 grit or something. You're just going to leave scratches all over it and make some massive work for yourself. I would only do like a really light pressure on it too. You don't want to press hard at all. When you get into the 320, if you need to buff something out or do whatever, you can press as hard as you want in a sense. When it comes to the veneer on the plywood, probably not. The MDF, you can probably hit it almost as hard as you want. Just make sure that you do a nice long stroke, or you're doing circles while you're buffing it, that type of a thing. With the orbital sander. Don't break your edges on the profiles, but you can break it on the back of your cabinet and the bottom, that type of a thing. The reason for breaking it is twofold. One, it won't chip when you build it all and put it all together. This is where your doors are going to hit constantly if you're opening and closing. If you have a really sharp edge, then the chances of chipping it are greater. Secondly, it holds the paint better and it won't like fray off or crack or anything like that, because the paint doesn't like to hold on 90s. As you'll see when we finish this, we'll get overspray on this, but the T-mold's there to cover that. We don't have to paint that, so it's not a big deal that way. All right, so we're gonna sand it all. I'm just gonna do all that stuff and fast forward, and I'll go over everything with you. Like I said, I'm gonna hit it with about 120 grit, real light, and then I'm gonna hit it a little harder and maybe twice as much coverage and stuff like that with the 320. So moving on, we'll show you them all finished. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go through what I was doing here. Probably see all that stuff. I try not to drag the project on the actual table, especially after it's sanded. You can put something down, but I find that if you put down like cardboard or foam or whatever, sometimes you just think that it's all good and then you flip it over and then you gotta redo your side because there was something there. If you just make sure that you're careful all the time, you should be good to go. One thing that I want to point out is I broke my edges around the door completely, all the way around. And I also broke the edges on places where dry fitting like that's going to occur. So when they're going to go over each other. So if you smash the door on this piece while trying to put it in, there's a less chance or opportunity for it to chip and stuff because it doesn't have that sharp, straight edge. All right, the other thing that I want to point out is specifically to this style where we've got that 1/4 inch kind of coming out there to as a kind of a lip to pop out of the machine to give it that extra little pop. When you're using the orbital sander, you do not want to go along the line through not only because it's against the grain on this plywood, you don't want to do it on MDF either. You want to use that small technique that I was using where it's up and down slowly, or you can go up like and down the whole length if you'd like. I just find that I can get it in there and I can kind of tilt the sander a little bit to kind of get my edge up top here, so that's whatever. Do not take a sanding block and go like this up in those corners. You will leave lines from the actual sandpaper regardless of its grit, and you will not be able to get rid of them without significantly taking off quite a bit of material by using like 120 grit sandpaper with orbital. That line will stay there forever, and it'll be the width of the sanding block, the width of your orbital sander, so you'll get your line right down here all the way where my finger is here. So you'll get it there, and then with the block you'll get it right at the bottom, no matter how careful you are. If you want to do it like that 100%, you got to tilt it up, keep your fingers underneath there, bend the block if you can, and then go. But as you can see, you got to put a lot of pressure on that, and you're going to move your cabinet around a lot. It's just going to be a pain in the butt. Just do kind of the way I showed you here, and you should be able to do it just as easy, and you shouldn't have any issues. So I'm going to move on here now to the MDF. I'll put my 120 back on and we'll set that up. So I'm going to make a quick mention just because I just dealt with it, but I will strongly suggest using MDF when you're doing this versus plywood. One of the other reasons why that I never mentioned in any of these videos or anything is its weight. This machine, although the exact same size with the exact same thickness, is at least twice the weight of what that plywood machine is. So weight, as much as you don't think you'd want it when you're playing the game and playing around, its movability and tippability and all that fun stuff is going to be based off of not only its construction and its depth and all that stuff, to make sure that it doesn't have a certain tilt and all that stuff that you have to think about. You got kids, you don't want your machines falling on your kids. The other thing is that you know, you want that stability so it won't rock around when you're playing with a couple of big guys or whatever, right? So there's a lot of little things to think about, and that's just another added little bonus that I didn't mention earlier that I have remembered because I had to pick it up. All right, so I went back to my 120. I'm good to go. I'm going to be breaking all my edges on these parts for the MDF. MDF is notorious for a 90-degree angle to crack, break, chip, that type of a thing. So once you get rid of it, either on a 25 to 45 degree angle, that's what you want to do. Plus they're actually pretty sharp. You want to leave it on your profiles because you're going to be covering that up anyway. But when you get a sharp edge on MDF, you can actually cut your hands on it. It's not super common, but it can happen on especially a fresh cut. Also right here where I have my miter, it's not 100% by any means. It's about 95% where I want it to be. But I also know when we were making that I'm gonna round that off with this sander as well. So I'll show you all that stuff up and close when we put them side by side when they're all done, and we'll go from there. Time to hit it hard. All right, so this may or may not need a little bit of touch-ups. What we're gonna do with this now is just go over any little tiny dealios. I didn't change over to the 320 till the end where I lost my sandpaper on that. Instead of stopping the video and changing it, I just did the 320 on the back side of this. I ran 120 on this whole thing, and I'm actually really happy with it. There's a lot of dust on it yet still. I'll hit it off with air and clean that all off, but the primer that we'll put on here is going to stick to that like glue. It's going to be Really, really, really nice. Now, when you sand these down, there's some parts where you might be like a millimeter off on your lines here. You can sand them out if you want, but just to let you know that if you've done it with this technique with the dado right to the edge here, whatever you do with T-mold across here is going to cover that up. All right? So you don't have to worry about sanding that all down, because if you do and it's off by just a little bit, you already know that this is straight, so why do that to yourself, because you won't have a straight line there anymore. So just make sure you do that. Some of these products that we put in, like T-mold and stuff, allow you for that little bit of cover up, touch up kind of things. That's why they're there, and that's why we use them. So we're good to go. Other than that, I really don't have much else to say, except for, you know, take your time, go over it a few more times, make sure that you're confident before you start putting a primer and paint on it. But as for where we're going with this, for this lesson and everything else, we are pretty much set and done. So congratulations for getting you this far. And yeah, you should be proud of yourself, and hopefully things turned out the way they should. And if not, you learned a whole bunch of things along the way, and second time's the charm, I guess. But hope to see you in the next lesson, and we'll finish these bad boys off.